Welcome to another episode of Diverse Perspectives. My name is Leena Sharma Seth, and I'm your host. I'm looking forward to today's conversation. And before we do that, I'd like to hold space for a land acknowledgement.
Bonjour, Sego, Tanshe, greetings. Halton region acknowledges the treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, as well as the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, and Anishinaabeg on which we gather. In stewardship with Mother Earth and the enduring Indigenous presence connected to these lands, we acknowledge the Indigenous nations of the past, present, and future. In the spirit of allyship and mutual respect, we will take the path of truth and reconciliation to create change, awareness, and equity as we strive to elevate the collective consciousness of society. Miigwech, Nyawe, Marcy, thank you.
Last fall, the 2022 Belonging and Racial Identity in Halton report was released. The purpose of this research was to further explore and truly understand how to provide First Nations, Inuit, Métis, and racialized individuals with a greater sense of inclusion in all areas of life, as well as in the decisions they make within communities where they live, work, and play. Findings in this report include that Halton region, the total percentage of racialized individuals is nearly the same across Canada at 25%, while nearly 10,000 individuals in Halton also identified as First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. This report also includes a host of recommendations from respondents on how to make spaces and experiences more inclusive, including healthcare, education, workplace, government, and more. Allow me to introduce our three guests for today's show. My first guest is Mohamed Banda, professor in the Faculty of Social Science and Humanities at Sheridan College. He has a BA, Combined Honors Sociology and Political Science, a Bachelor's of Education and Intermediate and Senior in Social Science and Politics, and an MA in International Development Studies, amongst other accolades. He is a counselor, psychosocial educator, and facilitator in a partner assault response program. He works in the community with men who are charged with domestic violence towards their intimate partners, supporting them to better understand the harmful effects of violence and abuse, and to learn nonviolent strategies to engage in healthy relationships. So welcome, Mohamed. My second guest is Andrew Tyrrell, president of the Canadian Caribbean Association of Halton. He's been the president since 2019. He's also very much involved with his community. He sits on the board of directors for several charities in the community, including past vice president of Radius Child and Youth Services, Oakville Community Foundation, and Oakville Hospital Foundation. He was appointed to Halton Police Services Board, where he has served for 9 years. My last guest, so welcome, Andrew, I should say that first.
And thank you.
You're welcome. And my final guest is Wendy Rinella, Chief Executive Officer of Oakville Community Foundation. Wendy is the CEO, and she's been in the position since 2015. And during her tenure, she has supported the implementation of a host of fabulous community initiatives, including a digitization strategy, onboarding, impact investing, initiating crowdfunding through the Give Oakville platform, and a host of other, what I'd say, Indigenous truth and reconciliation initiatives. So welcome, and so pleased to have you here.
Oh, thanks, Leena. It's great to be here.
Wonderful. And so let's dig into this conversation. And so maybe the first question I'd start with is, why was it important to you to see this research happen in our community? And maybe I'll ask you, Andrew, to go first.
Well, thank you, Leena. In 2020, after the murder of George Floyd, Wendy Rinella gave me a call and she said, isn't it a good time now to really get the pulse of the community? And I was thinking that in 2003, we engaged Maureen Brown, who's a noted sociologist, to engage with our youth, the Black youth in Oakville, and she authored a report called Growing Up Black in Oakville. And that was a groundbreaking instrumental report that really put on paper their voices and the need for the community to rally around Black people and really explain what it is that they were feeling in the community. So 2020, Growing Up Black in Oakville report was used by very many different organizations to demonstrate the need in the community. And I thought that this would be a wonderful time for it to be updated. Everybody was angry about what was happening. There were a number of events, and we really wanted to see what would be the answer to our question about, tell me about your sense of belonging in the community. So that's where it all started. And I was not surprised to see some of the results, but some of the results did, in fact, really open my eyes. So I'm glad that we did it, and I'm glad that it's there for the entire community. There's a lot of local charities that should use the report. There's a lot of organizations that have used it as a catalyst to change in their respective organizations. I know that the Halton District School Board and the Halton Catholic District School Board are using it to be the catalyst for their Black success coaches and bring in some Black social workers. The police are using it. Town of Oakville has used it. So I believe it's an instrumental and groundbreaking report that should be used by a lot of different people in all kinds of organizations to really understand what people are feeling and get the sense of pulse of the community. People think that everybody is doing okay, but they're not doing okay. And giving themselves a chance to really articulate why and what they would like to see as change was really important. And I'm glad to be a part of it.
Wonderful. Thanks, Andrew. What about you, Mohamed? What would you say is, why was this important research for you to bring to our community?
Thank you, Leena. On so many levels, the conversation and experiences of BIPOC communities not new within the community itself. But like Andrew, the murder of George Floyd, which also coincided with the pandemic when people got time to stay at home and start reflecting on the meaning of life itself. For me, I thought it was a very good time to expand the conversation and also remind people of the most important thing in life, which is these connections we have as human beings, as communities. So yes, I also got a call from my colleagues asking me if I would like to be part of this, important way of communicating the experiences and also gauging the sense of belonging that people have in the community. I jump at the chance to say, yes, I would like to be part of it. So it is an ongoing, I guess, part of my work to engage into these researches and also expanding and including different voices. And in this case, trying to sort of gauge the sense of belonging for residents and people living in Oakville. And that's how I got to be part of the project. And I'm also glad to hear that it is being used in educational settings in schools. Just as Andrew said, this is, I guess it is all worth it. This is the reason why I do this work, and this is the reason why I want to be involved in it.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Mohamed. Wendy.
Yeah, thank you, Leena. And just to build on what both Mohamed and Andrew have said, I did make a call to Andrew. And at that time, we know that the death of and murder of Mr. Floyd was really making members of our community hurt. And so I wanted to reach out to the Black community, and I wanted, as you would say, hold space. And I wanted to work with them on making sure that belonging was felt all across our community in all sectors. And That has been a very big focus of the Community Foundation, is increasing our sense of belonging within the community. We had done a report in 2017, and for lack of a better word, I'm going to say it probably whitewashed the results. Largely at that time, the population of Oakville around 2016 was clocked at about 33% of the population identified as Black, Indigenous, or a racialized person. Whereas now in 2021, it's 43.2%, I believe, is the most recent. So we knew the community was changing really quickly, and we knew that what we thought about 2016 data was not accurate. So not only did I reach out to Andrew, who came up with the suggestion of what research we could do, we also reached out to someone who works with Mohamed at Sheridan College, because historically the Caribbean Association, the Foundation, and Sheridan have been research partners and have done quite a bit of work together. So it was a natural fit. And we started building and developing the research so that it would be community-based. It would involve students from Sheridan, which Mohamed was wonderful in leading with his colleagues at Sheridan. And the advisory committee, of course, included you, Leena, Andrew, and Elder Peter Schuler with the Mississaugas of the Credit. So we wanted to make sure that it was properly guided and reflective of the various parties that we were trying to engage.
Wonderful. I know, yes, I was a part of this initiative, and for me, it was important, like building on what all of you have said, that I always believe data is so important to inform the way programs are developed, maybe new initiatives that are born in the community that we can't create in a vacuum, right? And so for me, it was really important to make data, the access of data really universal. So that's for me, this report, like Andrew, you lifted that up, Mohamed, as well, that really, viewers, if you're watching this, to get your hands on that report and think about how you can shape your programs and your offerings and whatever you're doing to build community across Halton. So yeah, and maybe I'll come back with the next question, which is really like, what is one insight? And I'm going to hold space for each of you. What is one insight from this report that you're really working, that's informing the work that you're doing in community? And maybe it's more than one, but I'm going to, for the sake of, it's a short show, what is one insight that continues to shape what you're doing in community and what you're doing to build community? So maybe I'd start with maybe Mohamed, you can go first.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, there are a lot of insights that I drew from doing the research. But the one that I want to talk about is the misconception about EDI, right? The misconception about EDI. Diversity is valued when all members of the community feel safe. They feel included and accepted. So taking it into curriculum, which I think will be the next conversation for me, is if we are able to use the EDI framework to revise curriculum and start this conversation at an early age, that would then make it easier for us to connect, to have the conversation with fewer challenges. I mean, there's always going to be some challenges, but without the foundation, it is going to be a little harder. I'm surprised to see students at post-secondary who does not know anything about Indigenous, experiences, and students who don't know what African Veil is, and you have to go over to explain it to them. Now, imagine if they had that information coming from primary school, from high school, then you can build on the next level of conversation rather than starting all over. So for me, it's the misconception about EDI. Before we started this, I went over to refresh my review the report, the Halton community report that we just finished. And I saw in some of the what do you call it, the qualitative responses, people really think you can separate EDI from inclusion and equity, that somehow they are separate, that somehow, I think, to quote the information is, why don't we focus on what makes us similar instead of what the differences? Difference isn't the problem. It is when it is used, it is weaponized to devalue, to exclude. That's when difference becomes a problem. By itself, it's not a problem. So yeah, I would say my issue is the misconception around EDI. It is very poorly understood. It is somehow their thinking is, well, focusing on different communities is the problem, and therefore, why don't we celebrate diversity? Well, what makes diversity beautiful? It is the differences, and focusing on the differences is just as valued and important as celebrating diversity. So yeah, that's just one, and I know we don't have the time to get into the rest of it, so I will leave space for others.
Thank you, Mohamed. Yes, appreciating that opportunity we have coming out of, a report like this to talk about what you've named here. So thank you for bringing that to the forefront. Maybe I'd invite Wendy to respond. What is that one insight amongst many that continue to shape what you're all doing at the Oakville Community Foundation?
Oh, I was really listening and engaged with what Mohamed was saying and just reflecting on that as well. So one of the things that has really struck me is when we talk about making people feel included and safe, we know the institutions have to change, and we kind of take a view of supporting and providing infrastructure and resources within the charitable sector. So to me, that means both helping our existing charities to change, but also supporting charities that are led by equity deserving groups with a mandate to support them. So at the Community Foundation, we're part of it too, Leena. We developed an online education program for charities to use, talking about board diversity and equity and anti-racism and gender equity, and as well as Indigenous perspectives. And we provide that free to many different, as many charities that want to use it within our community. I think there's been 180 charities that have used it for their volunteers, their staff, and their boards for better education. And then at the same time, recognizing there's been traditional inequities in charity funding, we've created a top-up fund during our big Give Oakville initiative, where we give funding to charities, but we give a top-up to those that are led and for gender equity and racial equity deserving groups. So, we think about things both from making our institutions and our charities more inclusive, but also raising up those differences, as Mohamed has identified.
Amazing, thank you. Andrew, what would you say is the one insight that you're shapes what you're doing at CCAH?
Really what did it for me is a lot of the people commented that they live in Oakville, they live in Halton, they pay their taxes, and they move around as residents, but they don't see themselves in the service providers. So when they go to their town halls or when they engage in the municipal programming, they don't see people who look like them. When they go into the hospitals, when they go into the libraries. And so what CCH has done as a direct result of this is we have done a many number of things. We thought about it when we put together what our Black History Month offering is, and this year we brought in the documentary of the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine, who is really a trailblazer, and she's really Black royalty for us. And she is the one who introduced the motion to create Black History Month. And we brought in her documentary to show that she overcame different hurdles. She started out as an immigrant in the federal government's assistance program that brought people from the Caribbean, and she rose to being a teacher, a valued educator, and then she went on to being an elected representative and somebody who really made a difference. But we also brought in, we used a report to go to the town of Oakville and say, we would like to put together a camp that is only made up of Black, Indigenous, and people of color, their children, to support their families. Wouldn't it be a gift to the community to have a day camp where people go to, and they're not just one of 40 kids that are Black or brown or Indigenous, but all of the kids in that camp look like them. And not only that, all of the programming is geared toward them. We bring in Black historians to tell them about the truth in Canadian history. We bring in Indigenous elders to talk about the Creator. We have a community garden that they farm with the Halton Environmental Network and showing them about the outdoors that they would not perhaps ordinarily get to really engage in. We give them music lessons, but the music lessons we give them are traditional steel pan and African drumming. So we really engaged the community to say, what is it that you would look like? What is it that a day camp would look like that you would really like to send your children to? And another thing that they said is all of the day camp counselors should reflect the kids that are in the day camp. So we have all Black, Indigenous, and people of color as day camp counselors. All the volunteers are Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And it's really something. This is in our second year now. Last year was our first year as a result of this report. And we've already secured funding for 2024. So we're really happy about that.
Amazing. So impressed by everything I've heard, and really, slides well into my last question. And I know like we're up against the clock, but like, what would be the call to action? What would be, and maybe I'll start with you first, Andrew. And what's that call to action that you'd want to, like, if, for viewers that maybe haven't gotten their hands on the report yet, hopefully we're enticing you to do that. And we'll share the link where you can find it here at the end of the show. But what would be a call to action to our viewers around what they might do with what they learn from the report?
I'd say to use that report as a jump off point to affect real change in your community. And just because there's certain demographics that they may feel aren't talking loud enough, doesn't mean that they're comfortable. They've just become comfortable with being uncomfortable, and that's not fair.
Yeah, thank you for that, Andrew. Maybe I'd invite Mohamed to go next. What would be your call to action to the community?
Yeah, my call to action is actually to a policy change, right, on educational level. As I said, I'm a big, very big on education and also how to change the curriculum. So it's all about changing the curriculum. You need to get to people to change. I mean, yes, we can also educate adults. But yeah, maybe we can do that somewhere. Some other organizations can take, as my other work will illustrate, I still do that. But really, if you really want to have a wholesale change the curriculum for the young ones coming up. And that's where you can have the most effective changes. So change the curriculum and educational system, like Andrew said, let the children see themselves reflected in everything that is done, the culture, the tradition, everything. That's what my call to action would be.
Love that. Thank you, Mohamed. And Wendy, what would be your call to action?
Well, I'm just reflecting on kind of the demographics in Oakville, at least. The younger you are, the more diverse the population. So within our school systems, it's more than 50% people who represent as Indigenous, racialized, or Black. And we just need to remember that, to Mohamed's point, that the type of programming that we offer should show them opportunities to celebrate their own culture, heritage, and future success. So we have taken the report and made it into videos with the help of a Sheridan graduate. And we also are offering a variety of different programming into the school system through Community Classroom. And we have a huge initiative underway called Dibwaywen, where we are actually in the process of redoing school education around the local treaties. So I think these, just to build on what Mohamed's saying, very important initiatives. But I also have something to say to all my fellow white people, which is stop being defensive. When you hear somebody raising a challenge, they're not challenging you, they're challenging the system. And stop acting defensive, listen and see how you can assist. Community is built on community. We can't be a community without each other. So we need to listen to each other, and we need to do it, as our elder Peter Schuler would say, in a good way. So let's start listening in a good way to each other so that we can be inclusive and bring each other together.
Amazing. Thank you. I feel like I didn't have to say very much. You all did a great job in terms of letting our viewers understand what's in this report. And so thank you so much. Really, these 27 minutes just whipped by. Appreciating you all, Andrew, Wendy, Mohamed, for the time you spent on this show today, and just, and the work you're doing, the amazing work you're driving in the community. So thank you. And to my viewers, I really just want to thank you for your support over these last couple of years. This is the last Diverse Perspectives episode. And just stay tuned, because we do have a new show coming in the fall that I will be hosting. We're going to revamp it a little bit, but really thank you for your support, your words of encouragement, and stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.